Chapter 3270. Yes, I have to tell you. Grandma will wait for you at home 2 days later, old Madam said happily. Auber had been trying to shirk responsibility for 2 days, but she didn't expect old Madam to take it so seriously. She couldn't help but sigh helplessly and nod hesitantly. Old Madam was overjoyed. She reached out and pinched her little granddaughter's tender cheeks. You can't lie to your grandma. I'm already a few decades old. I can't be fooled by a little girl like you. Auber looked at her gloomily. We said we'd come back, so we must. Got it. Chow Mu could only nod her small head again. Old Madam laughed happily. Mu Qingya hurriedly comforted her with a smile. Old Madam, look at how happy you are. Old Master has instructed us to keep an eye on your emotions. We can't let you be too happy or sad. Tisk. Old Madam pouted angrily and snorted. I'm not a puppet. How can I not laugh? Madam Chiu hadn't been able to get a word in. Seeing this, she hurriedly said with a smile, Isn't that so? Old Madam is full of energy. It must be because she's happy to see the Crown Princess. That's why she's in such good spirits. After what happened just now, Mu Ro Yen had been biting her lip and lagging far behind the crowd with her auntie. When she heard Madam Chiu's shameless flattery, she couldn't help but spit. How shameless! Chiu Shi of the second branch usually looked like a shrewd person, but she didn't expect that she would speak without integrity. Seeing that the old Tai Tai liked the Crown Prince Consort so much, she rushed to flatter the Crown Prince Consort. She was simply shameless. Shi Huixin's face was dark, but her heart was still pounding. Just now, after she had come back from the gates of hell, she suddenly realized something. In the future, she couldn't face the Crown Princess directly. She could only beat around the bush. After all, their statuses were worlds apart. Even if the Crown Princess didn't use her full strength, she could still crush her like an ant just by using her status to suppress her. Thinking of this, Shi Huixin couldn't help but shudder. She secretly scolded herself for acting rashly just now. But how could a normal person have such good self-control? How could they not fly into a rage when they suddenly saw their enemy right in front of them? A group of people sat in the pavilion and surrounded the old lady. They were enjoying tea and snacks, happily. Suddenly, they saw a manservant rush over in a hurry. He quickly kowtowed and repeatedly shouted, Old Madam, madams, it's not good. Madam Chen brought a group of guards and broke in. We couldn't stop dozens of them. The old madam frowned. Which madam of the Chen family is so rude? Since the Mu family had reserved this garden for a day, it meant that during this day, as long as the Mu family did not leave, New South Garden could not be open to outsiders. This was an established rule. Everyone in Long Yen City knew about it. The old madam frowned and was about to stand up to ask when she saw the noisy group of people approaching. The woman in the lead with an ugly expression looked very familiar. The old madam narrowed her eyes and then put on a surprised expression. Isn't this the wife of the Prime Minister? Why did you barge into New South Garden today? Madam Chen immediately spotted Chow Mu, who was sitting next to old madam, and suddenly dashed over. Chapter 3271. Ao Yi, Kai Xiu, and the others' expressions changed. They subconsciously reached out to stop the woman and scolded, Stop! Get out of the way! I want to see the Crown Princess. Madam Chen barged her way to the front of everyone and gritted her teeth as she looked at Chow Mu. Suddenly, she knelt before Chow Mu with a plop and pleaded in a tearful voice, Crown Prince Consort, please tell me my daughter's whereabouts on account of this subject's motherly love. I only have one daughter, Baojia. It is inevitable that I spoil her. If she has offended the Crown Prince Consort in any way, you can vent your anger on this subject wife. I hope that you can spare my daughter. Auber looked at the woman in front of her with cold eyes. This person's words were really sophisticated. She insisted that she had something to do with Chan Baojia's disappearance. On the surface, she begged for mercy, but in fact, she was reprimanding her. She was clearly saying that she couldn't get along with Chen Baojia, the child, who had been spoiled by her family. She, the Crown Princess, was not magnanimous enough. She was really a shrewd woman. If she followed her words, then it would be true that she had something to do with Chen Baojia. In fact, she had no interest in knowing whether Chen Baojia was dead or alive. She really didn't understand why these people liked to bite her and didn't want to let go. They only thought that she had done something to Chen Baojia. What a group of strange people. Was she, Arbor, such a boring person? If she wanted to make a move, she would directly kill her. Doing these sneaky things was not in line with her personality. Arbor sat quietly beside the old madam and stared coldly at Madam Chen. Madam Chen saw that she didn't speak for a long time and subconsciously looked up at her. However, when she met those dark and deep eyes, she couldn't help but shiver. This girl's awe-inspiring aura was really hard to resist. Not to mention her poor daughter Baojia, even she, as the left prime minister, has seen many families of officials in the officialdom. She has already practiced the style of officialdom. However, at this time, she can't help being awed by the momentum of the little girl in front of her. Chen Baojia's life or death has nothing to do with me. The young crown princess's cold words froze Madam Chen's heart. Her body inexplicably trembled, and her eyes narrowed as she looked at her. But Gu Yixuan and Long Min, who came with us, have witnessed the conflict between the crown princess and Baojia. Even Miss Zhong Li died in. Does this crown prince consort still need to explain to you what she says or does? Xiao Mu interrupted her coldly, her eyes containing a frigid intent. Chen Baojia was missing and didn't return to Dragon Flame City. Perhaps she died on the mountain behind the Sun Moon Temple, or perhaps she had an accident and was still trapped there. These people didn't investigate anything and didn't care about anything. They only listened and believed that she dealt with Chen Baojia. If she really did it, did they think that Chen Baojia would still be alive? It was simply ridiculous. Arbor's cold gaze slid across Madam Chen's pale face. She said coldly, "Madam Chen, you mustered a lot of people today and brought dozens of people here. Do you want to fight with the crown princess or something? Does the crown princess dare to confront the boy from the Gu family and the girl from the Long family face to face? Ha! What right do those two unpresentable things have to confront the crown princess face to face? You really think they are important people?" Chapter 3272. Madam Chen's expression changed slightly. She inwardly suppressed her anger and took a deep breath. "Crown Prince Consort, you don't understand. When a mother goes crazy, who knows what kind of outrageous things she will do? Are you threatening me?" Arbor narrows his eyes coldly. Bang! Madame Mu slams her hand on the stone table and glares at Madam Chen. "Madam Chen, although the crown princess has lost her mother, she still has me as her grandmother. As long as I and the old man are here, no one can bully her." "Madame Mu, I didn't mean that." Madam Chen softens her tone when she sees the atmosphere getting more and more stiff. Madame Mu stands up slowly. Arbor also stands up and reaches out to support her. "Madam Chen, you think too highly of your daughter. What is the status of the crown princess? Does she need to feel sorry for your daughter?" "I believe in my granddaughter. Since she said it has nothing to do with her, then it has nothing to do with her. Today is the day of the Mu family to visit the garden and enjoy the flowers. I don't want outsiders to be present. Please go back." Madam Chen is so angry that her chest rises and falls slightly. She can't help but say, "The crown princess said it has nothing to do with her. Then do you have any evidence?" "What evidence do you have?" Madame Mu interrupts Madam Chen's words with dissatisfaction. "Did you see the crown princess kidnap your daughter with your own eyes? Or did you see the crown princess kill your daughter with your own eyes? Where's your material evidence? Where's your witness? Just because Miss Long from the Long family and Gu family's brat made some baseless accusations, this basin of dirty water can be splashed onto the crown prince consort's head?" Old Madam sneered. "You are too naive. Madame Mu, she killed the girl of the Zhongli family in the secret land." Madam Chen can't help but interrupt Madame Mu's words with a sharp voice. She has been dissatisfied with our Baojia for a long time. At the beginning, Baojia and Ji Wei were both assigned to His Highness the Crown Prince. Now one is dead and the other is missing. Are you happy, Crown Princess? Why don't you just admit that you're a jealous woman who wants them dead with all your heart? Shut up. A deep and cold voice came from outside the courtyard. Everyone was slightly startled and turned to look. He saw two figures standing on the cobblestone path leading to the pavilion. Emo Lien was dressed in an ink-colored court robe. He stood tall and straight not far away. His handsome face was covered with a layer of frost. His phoenix eyes were slightly raised, and the coldness was threatening. Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji stood behind the Crown Prince. He felt waves of cold air coming from all over his body. He was so frightened that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In his heart, he was cursing his wife for being brainless. When he received the news that Madame had brought people to New South Garden to cause a ruckus, he had hurried over. Who knew that he would still run into His Highness the Crown Prince and let His Highness hear his wife's rude words. This matter could be big or small. If it was big, it would be disrespecting the Crown Princess. If it was small, it could be said that a mother spoke without thinking in a moment of desperation. It all depended on how the Crown Princess would deal with it. Why have you come? The young Crown Prince consort blinked at Emo Lien, who was striding over with large strides. Prince Emo reached out and took the little fellow into his arms. He raised a hand and lightly patted her back. If I didn't come over, I would have been kept in the dark. So this is how these people treat you behind my back. Greetings to Your Highness the Crown Prince. Chapter 3273. Every time Madame Chen and Madame Gao see you, do they yell at you without any manners? It's not as exaggerated as you say. Arba was speechless. What does this have to do with the wife of the Prime Minister? This morning, she had seen Madame Gao at the entrance of Zhanhua workshop. Although Madame Gao was also quite impatient and wanted to buy the beautifying pill, she wasn't like Madame Lu Ha, who stopped her and threw a tantrum and refused to let her go. Madame Gao did not take the blame. She was still very well-mannered. Emo Lien reached out to hold her little chin and carefully looked at her. Seeing that the little fellow's eyes were not red and teary, he sighed in relief. Arba was baffled and raised her little paw to slap his hand away. What are you doing? The way the two of them interacted with each other naturally made the entire Mu family a little dumbfounded. The little Crown Princess actually slapped His Highness the Crown Prince's hand away without any trace of politeness? Matriarch Mu was the first to recover her wits and hurriedly led people forward to greet them. Emo Lien retracted his hand and reached out to support Matriarch Mu, who was bowing in greeting. He said softly, "Grandmother, no need to be so courteous. Grandson-in-law still wants to greet grandmother." You can't. Matriarch Mu hurriedly pulled him back and exchanged a few pleasantries with a smile. She secretly looked at the Crown Prince and secretly nodded in her heart. Unparalleled in character and appearance, outstanding in style. Her little granddaughter's taste was really superb. Arba reached out her little hand and secretly tugged at his sleeve. Have you finished inspecting the market? Prince Emo turned back and nodded at her. He smiled and reached out to pull her to his side. Jojo, I missed you. Everyone was stunned and felt a little uncomfortable being stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. What was going on? Did His Highness the Crown Prince usually get along with the little Crown Princess like this? Sir Jojo secretly glanced at grandmother and the others and somewhat embarrassedly reached out to push Prince Emo. Don't push. Prince Emo glared at the little fellow. You promised not to push me again. You promised me. Arba didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He secretly pinched his waist and whispered, "Everyone's here." Emo Lien grunted, but he did not let go of her waist. He turned to look at Chen Chaoji and shouted angrily, "Chen Chaoji." Chen Chaoji was secretly wiping away the cold sweat on his forehead when he was suddenly called out by the Crown Prince. He felt a little uncomfortable. He stiffened for a moment, then hurriedly walked forward and bowed stiffly. Old subject is here. You heard what your wife said just now, right? Emo Lien glanced at him coldly. Do you have any thoughts? What thoughts do you have? Chen Chaoji only felt that the cold sweat on his head was becoming denser and denser. Your wife spoke rudely and slandered the crown princess. This prince wants to submit a memorial to His Majesty and strip her of her second-rank title. Do you have any objections? Although this was a question, Chen Chaoji was very clear that this was His Highness the Crown Prince's decision. Do you have any objections? Actually, what he meant was, do you have any objections? This meant, Chen Chaoji's face stiffened. He was the Prime Minister, but his wife was stripped of her second-rank title. In the future, when the official family gatherings were held, his wife would be many ranks lower than the right Prime Minister's wife. Madame Chen widened her eyes and couldn't help but ask, Your Highness the Crown Prince, when did this subject slander the Crown Princess? Chapter 3274. You just said that the Crown Princess is a jealous woman. Emolien coldly looked at Madame Chen in front of him. Originally, with his status, he didn't want to bicker with a shrew, but what kind of words did she say? Who gave her 100,000 iron guts, daring to point at his Jojo and scold him like this? Chen Chaoji hurriedly stepped forward and pinched his wife's lower back, stopping this stupid woman from spitting out the words that were about to come out of her mouth. He said with an embarrassed smile, Your Highness, please calm down. It was this old official, this stupid woman, who spoke indiscreetly. I ask Your Highness to forgive her on account of her longing for her daughter and being a bit delirious. You also said that Chen Baojia and Zhongli Jiwei were the ones who were assigned to this prince? Emolien coldly looked at the stupid woman in front of him, his voice like it was fished out from an ice cellar. Who gave you the courage to speak such nonsense? Who admitted it? Those two women have nothing to do with this prince. Does this prince's crown princess need to be jealous of these two ignorant women? Simply ridiculous. Prince Mo indifferently looked at her and said, From beginning to end, this prince only has the crown princess. Who does the crown princess need to be jealous of? Chen Chaoji, your wife slandered this prince's crown princess like this. You must give this prince an explanation. The onlookers suddenly felt strangely stifled. They only felt that this dog food was so ***king full so uncomfortable. What to do? Can you stop showing off your dog food in front of this group of resentful women? In the Mu family, other than fourth uncle who was widowed and never married, which one of the masters of the first branch, second branch, and fifth branch didn't have a few beautiful concubines by their side? Like the crown prince who clearly stated that he only wanted the crown princess alone, there probably wasn't a second person in the divine continent, right? At this time, they collectively lost their memories, leaving aside the two brothers, the great emperor and Prince Kong, and intuitively felt that His Highness the Crown Prince's situation was very abnormal. On their continent, of course, the strong would become stronger. When one's cultivation rose, would they still have to worry about not having money and beauties throwing themselves at them? Who could point out that a strong person only accompanied by a beauty to pass his days? How was that possible? Was this little crown princess a reincarnated demon? How did she manage to bewitch the future crown prince? Chen Chaoji, what do you plan to do? Prince Mo continued to interrogate. He didn't intend to let Madame Chen off so easily. It was beneath him to deal with Madame Chen. Let Chen Chaoji personally deal with Madame Chen. Anyone who dared to bully his little emperor would definitely not have a good ending. Chen Chaoji smiled bitterly. He realized that he had no way of glossing over the matter today. According to the Crown Prince, if they didn't give him an explanation today, it was inevitable that the Crown Prince would hold a grudge against the Chen family because of this stupid woman. Being remembered by the future Crown Prince was not a good thing. Chen Chaoji hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, Your Highness, don't worry. When this official returns, I will definitely. Are you trying to fool me? Prince Mo looked at him coldly. Forget it, wait for this Highness to report to Imperial Father and let Imperial Father make a decision. Don't. Chen Chaoji jumped in fright and hurriedly stopped him. This shrew spoke without reason, she deserves 20 lashes. He secretly glanced at the Crown Prince's expression and gritted his teeth. 30 lashes. This official will do it right away. I hope your Highness will not be angry. It's not me who will not be angry, It's my little crown princess who will not be angry, Prince Mo coldly corrected. Chen Chaoji nodded and hurriedly turned to the crown princess. I hope the crown princess will not be angry. Chapter 3275. The little crown princess only feels that this Chen Chaoji is a bit funny. With his character, he can actually sit in the position of the left prime minister. The great emperor's vision is really bad. The little guy curls his little mouth and looks on coldly as Chen Chaoji orders the servants to hold down Madame Chen and tie her to a tree. Then he personally lashes her 30 times while panting. Not one less, he doesn't dare to be lazy. While waving his arms, he hears Madame Chen's screams and curses. Mo Lien looks at Chen Chaoji and his wife with disdain. She reaches out and takes the little guy's little hand. Jojo, don't be angry anymore. What can she be angry about? Aber shakes her head, but she can't help but ask in a low voice, where do you think Chen Baojia went? It had been so long, and those who should have returned had already returned, but Chen Baojia still hadn't returned. Could it be that her crow's mouth was right, and she was still sealed in some corner of the back mountain of the Sun-Moon Divine Hall, unable to respond to her cries, unable to do anything? Prince Mo snorts, what does it have to do with us? Let's not talk about her. He looks like he doesn't want to talk about it. Jojo secretly finds it funny, but her face is calm. She naturally won't drag him to talk about another woman. Did you find anything in the city square today? Aber asks in a low voice. She raises her hand and pinches the back of his hand. Are you tired? Very tired. Mo Lien squeezed to her side aggrievedly and muttered quietly, we searched every nook and cranny of the market, wishing nothing more than to dig up every single floor tile. We didn't find anything. Aber is a little surprised. She originally thought that if they searched the city square again today, they might find some small things. She didn't expect Tianyun's movements to be so fast. In a flash, they've cleaned up and disappeared without a trace. Jojo, your husband has been busy all morning, but I didn't get anything. My heart hurts. Prince Mo held her little hand and said softly, you have to comfort me. Aber suppressed the smile in his heart and turned to look at him seriously. He nodded his little head vigorously. Yes. Mo Lien's gloomy expression was swept away. She immediately beamed and said, we have nothing to do in the afternoon. Let's go to Dragon Flame City for a walk. Ahem. Matriarch Mu coughed lightly at the right time. She could tell that this crown prince only had eyes for her little granddaughter. He had been staring at her for so long, and he didn't even look away. Mo Lien hurriedly turned her head and smiled at the old madam. Grandma, do you have any instructions for me? Matriarch Mu was overjoyed to hear her calling her grandma. She inexplicably switched sides and sided with her. Your Highness, this old one has discussed with Jojo just now. Matriarch Mu quickly recounted the matter of asking Aber to come home. Then, she looked at Prince Mo and said, since both of you have nothing to do in the afternoon, pack up a little and move back here for a few days. Mo Lien looked at Aber inquiringly. Aber looked at him helplessly. Mo Lien instantly understood his little wife's meaning. He thought for a moment and said, Grandma, it's just that we didn't have a good time staying here last time. He blinked and acted cute. Jojo and I are both kind people. We always get bullied when we go back to the Mu family. It's not impossible for us to go back, but we have to set some rules. Both of you are kind people? Everyone looked at Prince Mo and the Crown Princess as if they had seen a ghost. Chapter 3276. You two black-hearted people are already famous throughout Dragon Flame City. Speaking of the two of you, the number of things you've done to others is simply too many to count. You still call yourself a kind person? I really don't know where you get the face to actually say such things. Everyone secretly peeked at the Crown Prince and his wife. Matriarch Mu nodded with a smile. Okay. Grandma promises you. You can make your own decisions in Jade Orchid Court. You can do whatever you want. The more Matriarch looked at these two children, the more she liked them. They were such good children, good-looking and reasonable. She really didn't know how she could have angered them last time. It was most likely because Qingya didn't make proper arrangements. Qingya, now that the two children are back, don't interfere in their court matters anymore, Matriarch instructed with a smile. Mu Qingya's face immediately flushed red. How could she interfere in the Crown Prince's court matters? How could she have the ability and courage to intervene in the Crown Prince's and Crown Princess's affairs? When the Crown Prince and Crown Princess returned last time, she had kindly arranged for some people to be at their disposal. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen, and she had been criticized to this day. Mu Qingya took a deep breath and didn't refute Matriarch. Instead, she nodded with a smile. Yes, old madam. Qingya won't let anything like Xiao Xing and Zhu Xian happen in Jade Orchid Court again. Matriarch nodded happily and patted the back of Mu Qingya's hand. I'm also very assured when Qingya does things. Mu Qingya pursed her lips and smiled gently, looking like it was Qingya's honor to be able to reassure Matriarch. She looked gentle and docile. The young Crown Prince consort took a careful look at this person before turning her face away with a slight frown. At this time, Chen Chaoji had finished whipping Madame Chen. He hurriedly threw away the bloody whip in his hand and ran to Prince Amo, trembling. He bowed and said, Your Highness, this humble subject has finished his punishment. Amo Lien swept him a glance before nodding coldly. Bring him back and discipline him strictly. If he dares to disrespect the Crown Prince consort again in the future, a mere 30 lashes won't be enough to save him. Yes, yes, yes. Chen Chaoji let out a slight breath and ordered people to carry the whimpering Madame Chen out of New South Garden in a hurry. He didn't dare to stay here for a second longer, afraid that the Crown Prince would suddenly change his mind. Prince Amo looked coldly at Chen Chaoji's back. His eyes flickered, and Stay Up Late understood and prepared to leave. Jojo suddenly said, Come back. Stay Up Late blinked and turned to look at Prince Amo. Seeing him nod with a slight frown, Stay Up Late hurriedly retreated. That's enough. Xiao Mu cast a sidelong glance at him, and her soft, small claws pinched his large hand with distinct joints. Chen Chaoji has been an official for 30 years, so he's a shrewd person to begin with. How could he not be on guard? Prince Mo pursed his lips. Holding his wife's hand, he turned to Matriarch Mu and said, Grandma, we'll go back first. Okay. Grandma will wait for you at home. Matriarch Mu nodded with a smile. On the other hand, after Chen Chaoji ordered people to carry Madame Chen out of the garden, he hurriedly ordered people to be on guard and pay attention to their surroundings. It wasn't until he ordered people to quickly drive back to the Chen estate that he breathed a sigh of relief. When he alighted from the carriage, Chen Chaoji's back was drenched in sweat. He subconsciously raised his sleeve to wipe the sweat off his forehead. Chapter 3277. Master, what's wrong? The coachman looked at his master with some confusion. Chen Chaoji said with a sullen expression, Close the gate and carry Madam to the guest court, quick. Prepare a visiting card. This official will personally visit Prince Kang's estate in the afternoon. After saying this, Chen Chaoji ordered people to carry Madam to the guest court. As soon as the gate to the guest court was closed, Chen Chaoji slapped Madame Chen's face, unable to bear it anymore. Madame Chen had been whipped 30 times and was covered in blood without any strength. How could she withstand Chen Chaoji's hard slap? She immediately rolled down from the stretcher carried by the servants and called out, Master, with tears and snot running down her face. Stupid woman! Chen Chaoji shouted angrily, Impossibly stupid! After the Crown Prince and Crown Prince consort returned from the mystic realm, did anyone go up against them? Only an idiot like you would foolishly run to New South Garden to seek death after being instigated by a few words. If this official hadn't arrived in time, do you think you would have been able to keep your life? Although he didn't have much contact with His Highness the Crown Prince, he had received information from various sources that he was a vicious and merciless person. When he left New South Garden and returned to the Chan estate, he thought he would be attacked by the Crown Prince's men. In the end, the journey that left him on edge was peaceful and uneventful. Although he didn't know what was going on, Chen Chaoji had a premonition that His Highness the Crown Prince's actions were definitely not limited to these 30 lashes. Madame Chen's behavior of berating the Crown Princess and slandering the Crown Princess had clearly crossed His Highness the Crown Prince's bottom line. He definitely wasn't joking when he said he was going to submit a memorial to His Majesty to strip Madame of her title. Chen Chaoji took a deep breath and turned to say to his attendant, "Immediately prepare a sedan. We're going to Prince Kang's estate now." If His Highness the Crown Prince really submitted a memorial to His Majesty to strip Madame of her title, then his Chen family would definitely become the biggest joke of the spring. "Master." Madame Chen's face was covered in blood as she cried out pitifully, "Master, I couldn't bear it any longer and committed such an impulsive act." Chen Chaoji flicked his sleeves and strode out. He had just arrived at the gate of Prince Kang's mansion when he found that the gate of Prince Kang's mansion was tightly shut. His heart thumped. On the other side, the Crown Prince's letter of impeachment, as well as the letters of admonition from the imperial censors, entered the imperial study like snowflakes. Chen Chaoji was given the cold shoulder at Prince Kang's mansion, so he hastily went to Prince Jianpei's mansion, asking Prince Jianpei to come forward and mediate. After receiving Lord Chen's generous gift, the old king of Jianpei patted his chest and promised that he would definitely help. Without even eating, he rushed into the palace to seek an audience with the great emperor. The courtiers who had received the news could not help but secretly watch a good show. The king of Jianpei seemed to have forgotten how he had suffered at the hands of the young couple. No one knew what the king of Jianpei and the great emperor were talking about in the study after they closed the door. However, when it was close to evening, the decree of the imperial noble title had arrived at the Chen residence. Not only that, His Highness the Crown Prince also bestowed 2 beauties to Lord Chen. The imperial eunuch's words infuriated Chen Chaoji so much that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. His Highness said that Madame Chen is the paragon of virtue and virtue in the imperial capital. You definitely won't be jealous of these 2 beauties, nor will you become a jealous woman. Lord Chen, please accept these 2 beauties first. His Highness said that there will be more in the future if it isn't enough. It was normally 6 o'clock at night. Chapter 3278. If that's not enough, there will be more in the future. Lord Chen's eyebrows twitched. His Highness the Crown Prince spoke as if the 2 beauties in front of him were oranges and pears in the market. That night, the old king of Jianpei angrily sent a letter to the Eastern Palace, wanting to argue with the 2. The result was, "Sorry, His Highness the Crown Prince followed the Crown Princess back to her parents' home." The old king of Jianpei smashed the orange tree in front of the door with a slap. How could that couple be so infuriating? And this Crown Prince, wasn't he too lacking in moral integrity? The Crown Princess went back to her parents' home, and you followed her. Kai Xiao and Kai Qi led a group of palace maids and eunuchs of the Eastern Palace to tidy up the jade orchid garden inside and outside, then led everyone away. Abba had someone bring Chan Kuei over. The current Chan Kuei had washed away the gloomy smell on her body, and had a bit more sunshine. Half of her face was black, and it didn't look as dark as before. "Sit." Abba pointed to the seat beside her, letting Chan Kuei sit down. Chen Kuei bowed and cupped her hands, then said, "Thank you, little Mississippi." Arbor looked at her and asked, "Have you gotten used to it?" Chen Kuei smiled and said, "Little miss, don't worry, Chen Kuei is doing very well. Every day, when I have free time, I plant flowers and drink tea. When I have an epiphany, I go into seclusion to cultivate. It's much better than living alone in the past." The little Crown Princess nodded. "That's good. Chen Kuei, I want to ask you something." "Little miss, please speak. Are you familiar with Mu Qingya?" Chen Kuei was slightly surprised, then smiled and said, "We usually don't communicate much, but occasionally we will contact each other. But since your mother left the Mu family and I went to Chasing Wind Garden, we haven't contacted each other." Abba nodded. "I remember Mama mentioned it to me before. She said that mother's relationship with Mu Qingya is not bad?" "Yes." Chan Yi nodded. "Your mother once praised Mu Qingya, saying that although she didn't have any cultivation and looked weak, she was actually a very strong woman. It's indeed not easy for Qingya to manage such a big Mu family all these years. Aber nodded. Can you tell me more about her? Hearing that, Chen Kuei laughed. What does little miss want to know? Chen Kuei will definitely tell you everything he knows. Logically speaking, she should hate my mother. After all, according to normal people's thinking, it should be my mother's arrival that broke her and Mu Jingfeng apart, right? But she can actually befriend my mother as if nothing has happened. Chen Kuei hurriedly advised, Mu Qingya, this woman, is somewhat different from other women. Look, even your mother praised her for her strong personality. Ever since your mother married into the Mu family, Mu Qingya has completely cut ties with your father. Everyone in the Mu family knows this. But your father isn't a good thing. He wants to have a wife on both sides and hug on both sides. Chen Kuei snorted disdainfully and sighed. If it weren't for the Mu family and the Long family having a marriage agreement of 300 years, how would your mother have married into the Mu family? What do you mean? Aber blinked. The Mu family's ancestor, Chaoyang, once saved the life of the Long family's ancestor. At that time, the two families had a marriage agreement of 300 years. Chen Kuei smiled bitterly. Chapter 3279. It's agreed that within 300 years, there will be a pair of juniors in each generation who will marry. Regardless of whether it's a Long family girl marrying into the Mu family or a Mu family girl marrying into the Long family, there will always be a pair that needs to be married. So my mother is merely a sacrifice for the marriage alliance? Aber frowned slightly, a bit of displeasure in his heart. This kind of marriage alliance was too undesirable. If it was done carelessly, wouldn't it ruin his mother's lifelong happiness? Chen Yi sighed deeply. This is something that can't be helped. The ancestors' agreement cannot be violated. Due to the Long family's bloodline, the number of direct descendants is decreasing with each generation. In your mother's generation, there are only two siblings, your uncle Long Chuyu and your mother. For the sake of this marriage alliance, Miss married over, but the ending is heartbreaking. Chen Yi sighed. She then looked at Aber and said, Fortunately, Miss married well. If your mother's spirit is in heaven, she will definitely be very gratified. His Highness the Crown Prince was really too good to their family's Mississippi. A man like the Crown Prince was hard to find in this world. Sir Jojo wrinkled his little nose. Since Mu Qingya's personality is as strong and tenacious as Senior Nurse said, why did she still get involved with Mu Jingfeng even though she clearly knew that the marriage alliance between the Mu family and the Long family was inevitable? This? Chan Yi couldn't help but laugh bitterly, glancing at the stoic-faced young lady in front of her. This old one has never experienced love in her life. Mrs. Words really stumped me. Aber's lips curled. Perhaps, it's just that she hid it too well, and Senior Nurse and Mother were kept in the dark by her? That won't happen. Chen Yi shook her head, subconsciously wanting to defend Mu Qingya. Ever since Qingya became pregnant, she repeatedly tried to get rid of the child. I remember the most ruthless time was when she took abortion medicine. However, it was strange that Mu Rochuan had managed to survive despite being surrounded by danger several times. Later, it was old Madam who came forward to keep the child. Speaking of which, Mu Rochuan is quite lucky. Speaking of the past, Chan Yi couldn't help but sigh slightly. She looked out the window in the distance and said softly, not long after that, because of the Long family's matter, Miss didn't have time to care about anything else. Miss, you don't have to be suspicious. At that time, I checked the abortion medicine, and old Madam also sent people to check it. She wasn't acting, it was real. The young Crown Prince consort pursed her lips and absent-mindedly nodded. How can there be such a good person in this world? Chan Yi didn't try to persuade him any further. He knew that this child was extremely cautious and wouldn't have a good impression of Mu Qingya for no reason. Aber Mu's is Miss of the Mu? Aber's? Why? Why don't you miss? Mrs. Miss? Miss, why are you always in our way? An ear-piercing scream came from outside the door, mixed with the cries of a few infants. Impudent! Auntie Jing's voice abruptly rang out. How dare you barge in without being summoned by the crown prince consort? You're really too bold for a mere concubine. Who gave you the guts to do this without any rules and regulations? Yuan Qiong-er's face paled, and she tightly hugged her daughter in her arms. She was like a little white flower, teetering in the wind and frost, on the verge of tears. Miss 8 is seriously ill. Please treat her, Crown Princess. Chapter 3280. Scoundrel. Aunt Jing had been in the imperial palace for a long time. When had she ever seen such an impudent and rude woman? She was truly angered to the point that her heart ached. What is it? The young crown princess walked out of the door and saw Yuan Qiong-er's disheveled and tearful appearance. It was as if someone here had bullied the mother and daughter. She frowned and looked coldly at Yuan Qiong-er. What are you doing? When Yuan Qiong-er saw the young crown princess walk out of the room, she hurriedly hugged the child and struggled with all her might. She repeatedly cried out, Crown Princess, please save 8th young Miss's life, Crown Princess. The two little palace maids who were holding her didn't dare to kill her because they were obstructing her from carrying the child. In the end, Yuan Qiong-er broke free from them. Yuan Qiong-er stumbled and fell at the young crown princess's feet with the child in her arms. She wailed loudly and shouted, Crown Princess, please be merciful and save 8th young Miss's life. Arbor coldly glanced at her. The bone-chilling coldness in her eyes made Yuan Qiong-er shiver all over for no reason. The young crown princess's eyes were too cold, as if she was looking at a corpse. Yuan Qiong-er subconsciously hugged the baby in her arms tightly. 8th young Miss Mu Roxue was only 20 months old from birth. Being tightly held by Yuan Qiong-er, she burst into tears. Pull her away, the young crown princess coldly shouted. A few low-level servant women pounced over. One of them grabbed Yuan Qiong-er's collar and pulled her away from the young crown prince consort. Yuan Qiong-er cried out in alarm and the child in her hands was snatched away. Her eyes instantly reddened and she screamed crazily, What are you doing? Are you trying to snatch someone's child in broad daylight? She didn't expect that the young crown princess would order people to attack her the moment she saw her. Not only that, she even directly snatched the child in her arms. What was she trying to do? Was she trying to kill her 8th young mistress by throwing her to her death? At this thought, Yuan Qiong-er couldn't help but tremble all over. She stared at Arbor in horror, as if she was a poisonous snake or a fierce beast. Crown Princess. An old nanny gently handed the child to Arbor. Arbor looked down and saw that the little person's face was already red from being strangled. Coupled with the fact that he was crying non-stop, his mouth had sucked in a lot of air. At this moment, he was panting and gasping for air with his little mouth open. She reached out and gently rubbed the baby's swaddling clothes. Then, she untied the apron around the baby's neck and gently pressed it twice. Finally, the baby's crying gradually stopped. Yuan Qiong-er widened her eyes in anger and screamed with a pale face, Crown Princess, what are you doing? Slap him. The old nanny at the side immediately rolled up her sleeves, took 2 steps forward, and slapped Yuan Qiong-er's white and tender little face. Ah! Yuan Qiong-er's body tilted and she fell to the ground. She felt a burning pain on her cheek and felt that the left side of her face was swollen. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she angrily looked up in the direction of Arbor. She seemed to be very confused as to why she was suddenly slapped. Saishio, tell her the reason, Arbor said coldly. Saishio took a step forward and said sternly, You don't know the rules. You barged in without being summoned by the crown princess. This is the first crime. You were possessed by a drama queen and showed off in front of the crown princess. This is the second crime. Chapter 3281. You're just a mistress of the Mu family. Isn't it good for you to live a simple life? Why do you have to make trouble in front of the crown princess? You even dragged your own child into this mess. The child is still so young. Do you want her to learn your cheap ways from now on and become a despicable person like you when she grows up? Yuan Cheong widened her eyes in shock. She didn't expect that the little palace maid beside the crown princess would dare to reprimand her like this. You. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. Arbor didn't bother to look at her and directly carried the child into the room. After checking the child's body, he took out a mild antipyretic medicine and carefully poured it into the child's mouth. When Mo Lien stepped into the courtyard, he saw a woman with a head full of pearls and jade ornaments. Her hair was disheveled and she was forced to kneel in the courtyard. He frowned and walked over as if he didn't see anything. As soon as he pushed open the door, he saw his little fellow bending over with her back to him and pouring medicine into the mouth of a baby. Mo Lien slipped to his wife's side like a gust of wind and glanced at the baby who was placed on the fluffy blanket. Is the fever gone? Yes. Arbor had already finished feeding the baby. He put down the medicine bottle and turned to look at him. You sent the state preceptor away? Mo Lien pursed his lips and nodded. The state preceptor suddenly came to visit the Mu family, so the old master called him over. He didn't know why that old evildoer came to the Mu family. He said a lot and in the end, he even took the old master's birthday banquet invitation card. This made the crown prince very suspicious. Did the state preceptor come here today for no reason to personally ask the old master for an invitation card? Arbor tidied up the baby's swaddling clothes and picked her up. At this time, the child was already asleep. The abnormal blush on her small face gradually faded. At this time, there was a little pink and tender color on her porcelain white face. Her breathing was also much more normal than before. The young crown prince consort's gaze inexplicably softened a little. Prince Mo's eyes lit up as he watched from the side. His wife liked children. This was a good sign. In the future, perhaps they could, cough, have a few more babies to make their wives happy. Your Highness. When Yuan Cheong saw Prince Mo walking out of the room with the little crown princess, she couldn't help but struggle for a moment, desperately trying to move forward on her knees. The old woman who was pressing down on Yuan Cheong's shoulder had an angry look in her eyes. She exerted some strength in her hand, causing Yuan Cheong to cry out in pain. Your Highness, please uphold justice. The crown princess suddenly beat me up without saying anything and stole my child. The old woman who was pressing her down was even more ruthless. Yuan Cheong cried out in pain. Teach her the rules, Mo Lien coldly said, then walked out of the door with the little crown princess. They hadn't walked far when they heard the sound of slapping in the face, accompanied by the old woman's angry rebuke. You're just a lowly servant outside. How dare you call yourself me in front of the crown princess? This Mu family is indeed uneducated. It seemed that Yuan Cheong had received the education she deserved. Where are we going, Jojo? Prince Mo asked. To the old master's north courtyard. Arbor looked down at Mu Roshue, who was sleeping soundly in his arms. It's better to leave this child with the old madam. Chapter 3282. When Arbor arrived, Matriarch Mu was just about to have dinner. Hearing that her granddaughter and her husband had arrived, she was overjoyed and hurriedly ordered the servants to bring more chopsticks, pulling them to eat together. Who is this child? Arbor glanced at Kai Xiu, who was behind him. Prince Mo was secretly amused, knowing that this little fellow was too lazy to explain. Kai Xiu hurriedly stepped forward and recounted what happened in Yulon Court. Matriarch Mu's face darkened, and she felt a little depressed. She had just invited this little ancestor back home to stay for a while. How did that ignorant mistress come to her courtyard to cause a ruckus? She suddenly had some doubts about Mu Qingya's housekeeping skills. Previously, when she saw Mu Qingya managing the entire Mu family, she was quite organized and didn't have so many messy matters. Why did it feel like her abilities had declined a lot recently? Or was it that the mistress, Yuan Cheong, was too good at causing trouble by jumping up and down in the eldest branch? Grandmother, you've just recovered from a serious illness, so you still need to recuperate. But that Yuan Cheong, you've seen her character. Arbor couldn't help but explain, her brain isn't good, and her methods are even more vulgar. With her current momentum of being favored by Mu Jingfeng, her child's fever is so high. How could there be no doctor to treat her child? She just has to pretend in front of me. Does she think everyone is a fool like her? Matriarch Mu sighed. Naturally, she was cursing Yuan Cheong-er in her heart. Everyone thought that the little crown princess was young and inexperienced, but she was smart and didn't know anything. Her eyes were as clear as fire. I don't care about the grudges between her and the eldest branch's wife. Today, she came to my court with her child, which means she doesn't know proper etiquette. This crown princess taught her a fierce lesson. It's also good for her to remember in the future that she shouldn't cause trouble for me and Qian, when she has nothing better to do. Since she pretended in front of me, I'll give her an unforgettable lesson. Matriarch Mu nodded, but she didn't know whether to laugh or cry in her heart. The young crown prince consort's stoic face was taut, but she was truly swift and decisive when it came to doing and speaking, not giving the slightest bit of face to others. I understand. Matriarch Mu patted the back of Qiao Mu's hand with a smile. She then turned to the nanny beside her, who had her head bowed, and said, "Bring the child to my room. I'll raise her here for a period of time." "Sorry to trouble you, grandmother." "How is it troublesome?" The old madam smiled and said, "Little 8 is also my granddaughter. Letting her stay by Yuan Cheong-er's side is harming her." Speaking of this, old Madame Fu felt a little angry in her heart. The reason why Yuan Cheong-er dared to do this was definitely because of Mu Jingfeng's protection. It was really enough. Jingfeng, this child, looked good in the past, but in recent years, he had become worse and worse. Since he had found Qing Ya to be his second wife, he had also created a mistress to humiliate her. If it was any other madam, they would not be happy. Moreover, this child was actually raised by an outsider. It was truly unruly to the extreme. Arbor said, "Grandmother, when you were cultivating, you were too eager to advance, which led to a bit of qi deviation. If grandmother trusts me, take the medicinal cuisine I prescribed for her for half a year. She should be almost fully recovered." Matriarch Mu's eyes suddenly lit up when she heard this. There were some problems with her meridians that even an old physician might not be able to see, but her granddaughter was able to point it out. Chapter 3283. Jojo, do you really have a way to cure grandmother's chronic illness? Old Madame Mu hurriedly asked, "Will eating medicinal cuisine work?" Arbor nodded. "Grandmother, do you want to try?" Yes, of course. Eating medicinal cuisine is such a simple thing, so why not try it?" Old Madame Mu nodded with a grin. "Besides, if my granddaughter says there's a way, then there's definitely a way." Arbor nodded. The young couple accompanied old Madame Mu for dinner. Today, old Madame Mu had a great appetite and ate a lot. The dinner table was also filled with laughter and laughter. Although Sir Jojo was expressionless the entire time, for some reason, old Madame Mu felt that the little fellow's cold face was inexplicably cute. Old master, what's wrong?" The voice of a nanny who was guarding the door suddenly sounded. Then, the nanny seemed to have been pushed to the side and bumped into something, causing her to cry out in pain. The door to the room was forcefully pushed open. Mu Jingfeng stood at the door, fuming. He strode in and bowed to old Madame Mu. "Mother." He then turned to glare at Arbor. "Where's the child? You evil creature, you've only been back for less than half a day, yet you're already running amok." Old Madame Mu slammed the table in anger. "What are you doing? Barging in and shouting. Do you still have His Highness the Crown Prince in your eyes?" When Mu Jingfeng found his beloved concubine in Yulon Court and saw that her cheeks were red and swollen from being slapped, his mind went blank. Then, he heard Yuan Cheong-er complain tearfully that the crown princess had snatched her child and indiscriminately hit her. Mu Jingfeng was even angrier when he heard this. This evil creature, did she want to anger her father to death the moment she returned? Now that he heard old Madame Mu's reprimand, he could not help but inwardly quiver. He quickly turned to look at Emolien, who was sitting at the table with an unusually cold and furious expression. Seeing Prince Mo's expression that was about to explode, Mu Jingfeng's heart thumped. However, he couldn't help but clench his fists and say, "Mother, I'm here to pick up little 8. Cheung-er is very worried about her daughter. The crown princess fooled around and brought little 8 to you. Xiao Ba will stay here with me for a period of time." Matriarch Mu calmly interrupted Mu Jingfeng. The moment he said this, not only did Yuan Cheung-er's expression change, even Mu Jingfeng could not help but reveal a look of surprise. "Old madam!" Yuan Cheung-er cried out. The old madam shot her a cold glance. "I've already made up my mind. Don't say anything else. How is little 8 going to live her life in the future if she follows such an unpresentable person like you?" Yuan Cheung-er's eyes widened in surprise. Mu Jingfeng suppressed the anger in his heart and shouted at Auber, "Are you happy now? You're causing trouble the moment you come back." "Shut up." Emolien slammed the table and stood up. Her cold eyes turned to Mu Jingfeng. "Mu Jingfeng, try scolding my wife again. It was my idea to raise little 8 by my side," Matriarch Mu coldly said. Matriarch Mu said coldly and glanced at Mu Jingfeng. "If you have an opinion, tell it to your father." Auber curtsied. "Grandmother, I'll take my leave first." She felt like her breathing was about to stop if she stayed with that scum for a second longer. Auber pulled Emolien out of the door and came face to face with Mu Qingya, who had hurried over. Auber looked meaningfully at Mu Qingya. "Great Madam Mu, you've got some tricks." Chapter 3284. Mu Qingya was startled. Then, she calmly took half a step back and bowed to Prince Emo and Auber. "Greetings, Crown Prince and Crown Princess." Xiao Mu's gaze swept over her coldly before she nodded and said, "This Crown Prince consort knows that you have the intention to scheme against that outside. Do you know why I'm so considerately cooperating with you?" Auber slowly walked up to Mu Qingya, whose head was slightly lowered. "Because in my opinion, these tricks of yours, both inside and outside the house, are very stupid. I can cooperate with you this time to suppress that mistress. Next time, it can also be your turn." Auber stretched out his hand. Mu Qingya subconsciously took a step back and shrunk her shoulders. Auber's small hand paused in midair for a while before gently falling down and helping Mu Qingya smooth the hair that was floating in front of her eyes to the back of her head. "There's no trick that can escape my eyes." Auber stretched out 2 fingers and gestured with his eyes. He said coldly, "Be a good first madam and don't provoke me, okay? I know you're a smart person." She gently stroked Mu Qingya's shoulder twice and suddenly smiled. The smile in her eyes was deep and cold, as if a cold light had passed through the cold moon. "If you want to hide it, then hide it deeper. Don't let me find out anything." She took a deep look at Mu Qingya, then turned around and walked slowly to Emolien, who was smiling faintly, and took his hand. It wasn't until the 2 figures disappeared from the end of the corridor that Tsung Lu, who had been standing stiffly with her head lowered, couldn't help but fall to the ground. Wet with cold sweat, Nanny Chio couldn't help scolding in a low voice, "Hurry up and get up. What are you doing?" Mu Qingya took a deep breath. Her straightened back was already drenched in cold sweat at some point. The little girl's eyes were like a venomous snake from hell. When she stared at him, it made his heart darken. He couldn't see the slightest bit of light. It was a little scary. Inside Yulon Courtauber sat on the brocade couch. With a wave of his small hand, a circle of spiritual energy appeared in front of him. The demonic eye that was attached to Mu Qingya's shoulder came into play and clearly reflected their current situation. After Mu Qingya paid her respects to the old madam, she pacified the irritable Mu Jingfeng before returning to her own gilded garden. Along the way, Tsung Lu naturally talked about the little crown princess's vile behavior. Mu Qingya couldn't help but scold her when she saw that her words were getting out of hand. Nanny Chio hurriedly asked her to calm down. After the master and servants returned to the courtyard, Mu Qingya sat down by the window, looking exhausted. She supported her chin with one hand and stared blankly outside the window for a long time. Xiao Mu creased her brows and abruptly cast a sidelong glance, her vigilant gaze sweeping over her surroundings. Mo Lien just happened to step through the door. Seeing her wide-open eyes and her head turning back and forth as if she was looking at something, she couldn't help but smile and step forward to hug her. "Looking at your husband?" "No," Sir Jojo said expressionlessly. "Chirp." Mo Lien lowered his head and pecked her on the lips. "Punishment for lying." Lord Jojo absent-mindedly looked around and subconsciously reached out to cover his thin lips that were close to hers. Chapter 3285. "I feel like someone's watching us," Arbor said with a puzzled expression, her little hand falling loosely on his lips. "Little hoodwinker." Prince Amo lowered his head and continued to kiss her. "Really?" Sir Jojo looked into his eyes with a serious expression. Mo Lien was slightly taken aback. Only then did he realize that this little guy wasn't joking with him, so he collected his thoughts and looked around. "There's no divine perception fluctuation." Mo Lien blinked. Sir Jojo jumped off the couch and walked barefoot to the window. He stuck his head out to take a look, then retracted his gaze in puzzlement. There was a prickly feeling in his back, and he didn't know what was going on. Mo Lien held his wifey's hand and returned to the brocade divan to sit down. He carried her onto his lap and wrapped his arms around her small waist. "Chow Chow, is it because you feel uncomfortable all over in the Mu family?" "It's fine. If you don't like it, we can leave tomorrow." Sir Jojo also felt that he might be a little too sensitive. He turned his head to glance at him and said, "Humph. If I leave right after coming, wouldn't I be telling everyone that I'm afraid of Mu Jingfeng?" She drew the light and shadow circled by the demonic eye closer to her eyes and frowned at Mu Qingya and the others. No matter how she looked at it, Mu Qingya looked like a docile and amiable woman. She really couldn't find any flaws in her. Could it be that she was really overthinking it? "Go and close the doors and windows." Mu Qingya gave Nanny Chio a look. The latter immediately understood and hurriedly closed all the doors and windows before returning to Mu Qingya's side. Mu Qingya stood up. Seeing that Song Lu wanted to follow her, she impatiently brushed her sleeve and pushed her away. "Song Lu, if you criticize Second Miss in front of me again in the future, you can leave on your own. I can't control you anymore. In the future, I'll have your new master take care of you." The servant turned pale with fright. She hurriedly knelt down and said with tears streaming down her face, "First Madam, I won't dare not casually criticize the Crown Princess again." "Remember what you said today," Mu Qingya said coldly. "Wait outside." "Yes." Song Lu wiped her tears and pitifully climbed up from the ground. She then retreated to the door and closed it again. "This girl is too unruly," Mu Qingya sighed. "With First Madam taking care of her, she can always become more mature." Nanny Chio smiled and held Mu Qingya's arm. Mu Qingya smiled faintly and patted Nanny Chio's hand before leading her behind the screen. The two of them walked to a row of wooden cabinets at the back and looked at each other. Mu Qingya stretched out her hand and twisted open a jade wall beside her. The wooden cabinet on the left moved backward, making a small path that only allowed one person to pass through. Mu Qingya and Nanny Chio walked in one after another. Unexpectedly, there was a small room behind the wooden cabinet. There was only a small birch table in the small room. It was more than a meter long and had two curved corners. In the middle of the table was something covered with a piece of black cloth. Mu Qingya stared blankly at the thing on the table. When she turned her head to the side, a ruthless glint flashed across her eyes. At that moment, Nanny Chio had already quietly walked behind her. She was holding a large black lacquered wooden box in her arms, a cold glint flashing in her eyes. She put the box on the ground and opened the lid. Arbor's pupils contracted. Chapter 3286. Inside the lacquered wooden box was a naked wooden figurine. It had a golden ring on its head and silver needles pierced into all the major acupuncture points on its body. It was so bright that it made people dizzy. Emo Lien curled her lips. I didn't expect Madame Mu to play this trick. The two took a closer look and saw a string of birth characters engraved on the figurine's chest. Arba thought for a moment and saw that it wasn't her mother's birth characters, nor was it her own. A trace of doubt appeared in her eyes. Nanny Chiu handed a small hammer to Mu Qingya with a murderous look on her face. Mu Qingya punched the wooden figurine and muttered something under her breath. What is she saying? Arba narrowed her eyes. Mu Qingya was muttering in the image. Her voice was so soft that she couldn't hear it clearly. However, looking at her ferocious face, it seemed that the little person under her was her mortal enemy. Mu Qingya kept hitting the figurine with the hammer in her hand. Every time she hit it, fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. When she hit it for the 9th time, she seemed to be suffering from the backlash of the Yen Shang technique. A trace of blood seeped out of the corner of her lips. Madam. Nanny Chiu hurriedly reached out to support her. It's been nearly 10 days. That long guy will get the retribution he deserves in 3 days. I know Madam is eager to take revenge, but we can't be too hasty. I've waited long enough. Mu Qingya's eyes seemed to be flickering with light. She leaned against Nanny Chiu and slowly stood up. She coughed a few times and wiped the blood from her lips. Long Shoshin deserves to die. Long Shoshin? Arba couldn't help but be taken aback. Wasn't Long Shoshin the name of the head of the Long family branch in Longyan City? Arba had a big conflict with Long Shoshin's family at the palace banquet. After that, she had investigated the Long family quite a bit. Why did Mu Qingya say that Long Shoshin was trustworthy? Madam, this kind of thing can't be rushed. You're using the body of a mortal to do this Yen Shang technique. Now the backlash is not small. If you don't pay attention in time. Mu Qingya raised her hand to stop Nanny Chiu. I've waited for so long. Finally, I've found a chance to take revenge. This time, I have to seize it no matter what. Mu Qingya took a deep breath and turned to look at Nanny Chiu. Nanny, you'll help me, right? You will definitely help me. Yes, yes. Nanny Chiu nodded repeatedly. If this little technique of mine can help Madam and let Madam untie the knot in her heart, then I will definitely help Madam without hesitation. Mu Qingya's eyes wandered as she stared at the small wooden table in front of her. Nanny Chiu took a few steps forward and lifted the black cloth covering the object. A memorial tablet appeared in front of everyone, with the words Long Chuyun engraved on it. Fresh melons and fruits were placed in front of the memorial tablet. A small birch table was wiped clean and spotless. Mu Qingya quickly walked forward. With Nanny Chiu's help, she knelt on the green futon in front of the birch table. Sister, if your spirit is in heaven, please bless me. This time, I must get rid of that traitor Long Shoshin. I'm not afraid of any hardships. I'm just worried that Long Shoshin will continue to get away with it. Sister. Mu Qingya took a few steps forward on her knees and looked at Long Chuyun's memorial tablet with gentle eyes. Don't worry. I will definitely protect Jojo for you. Chapter 3287. Madam, should we go and explain to second miss? No, don't try to explain. Mu Qingya quickly grabbed Nanny Chiu's hand and shook her head. Jojo has been living in the lower star sector since she was a child, so it's understandable that she's so defensive. Let's not say anything. I believe that time will reveal a person's heart. One day she'll know. Go and pack up. We'll come back tomorrow. Madam, you've already suffered a backlash. Why don't you stop for a day? No. Mu Qingya interrupted Nanny Chiu sternly. It wasn't easy for me to get a death warrior planted in Long Mansion to steal that old thief's birth characters and sew the curse rune into his purse. I've done so much. I can't let all my efforts go to waste. So what if he has cultivation? He's still going to fall into our hands, Mu Qingya said coldly. There's only 3 days left. I can make him die without anyone knowing. At that time, others will only think that he was obsessed with cultivation and died from chi deviation. They won't suspect us at all. In short, Long Shoshin must die. I've tolerated him for long enough. Nanny Cho nodded. Yes, I'll do my best to help madam. Thank you, Nanny Cho. Mu Qingya looked back at her and took a deep breath. I believe that if sister's spirit is in heaven, she'll bless us with success. The two of them left the secret room, moved the wooden cabinet to its original position, and opened the door. Just as senior servant Chiu called out, Tsonglu, she saw a reckless little girl running over from not far away in the corridor. She tripped slightly and with a splash, a basin of cold water was splashed all over. Nanny Cho's eyes sharpened. She raised her hand and waved her sleeve to brush away the water that was coming straight at her. But no matter how fast she moved, a portion of the water still splashed onto Madame Mu beside her. You're courting death. Nanny Cho scolded angrily. In front of Arbor, the scene in the spirit energy circle formed by the demonic eye was gradually fading. Since the demonic pupil was soaked in water, the effects were naturally much worse. Arbor retracted his gaze and looked at Emolien blankly. Is Mu Qingya really my mother's good friend? Could it be that I really misunderstood her? Chow Mu creased her small brows in bewilderment. Emolien couldn't help but laugh and hold her little hand. All right, you're not allowed to worry about other people's matters. How about this? Tomorrow I'll send someone to the Long family to ask around. Won't we know if Long Shoshin has been cursed by someone? Okay, Lien's Jojo, let's go to sleep now. I'm so sleepy. Emolien carried his little wife and got up and walked towards the bed. Sir Jojo looked at him expressionlessly. After a while, he said, Make a defensive barrier. Emolien, I feel like there's a pair of eyes staring at us. Emolien turned around with the little fellow in his arms and used his divine perception to carefully check the room. He saw the candlelight flickering slightly. Behind a row of pine and bamboo screens was a large floor-to-ceiling vase decorated with beautiful patterns. Behind it was 100 treasures grid. Where were the eyes? Okay. Everything my little emperor says is right. Emolien casually set up a defensive barrier, then placed his darling on the bed and kissed her gently. Go to sleep. Chapter 3288. Lord Chow Chow narrowed her eyes, her furry little head burrowed into the man's embrace, and said in a small voice, If I've really wronged her, then I'll apologize to her. Emolien pursed his lips in amusement as he rubbed the little one's head. I know, my family's little emperor is the most considerate. Sir Jojo nodded his little head, stretched out a pair of slender arms, and hooked his waist as he whispered softly, Lotus. Remember to wake me up tomorrow morning. The next morning. Sir Jojo rolled out of bed, blinked his eyes, and looked around. His little face couldn't help but tense up. Where's Jojo's Lotus? Kai Chi, who was carrying toiletries into the room, couldn't help but smile when she heard this. The Crown Prince went to the palace early in the morning. Sir Jojo's little face tightened unhappily. Didn't I ask him to wake me up? Kai Chi used a lot of strength to maintain the expression on her face. His Highness did wake her up, but the Crown Princess was in a deep sleep, and no matter how hard he tried, she didn't wake up. Sir Jojo looked at Kai Chi and said expressionlessly, Do you feel like laughing? Sai Chi vigorously shook her small head with an N, but still said fearlessly, The Crown Prince consort is still holding onto a strand of His Highness the Crown Prince's hair without letting go. In the end, His Highness had no choice but to cut his hair. Look, isn't it still in your hand? Sir Jojo looked down with an expressionless face. Sure enough, her white and clean little hand was still holding onto a strand of Jojo's lotus hair. Kai Chi said seriously, Before His Highness left, he kept shaking his head and muttering that if this goes on, he thinks he'll become bald sooner or later. The eunuchs and palace maids who were trying hard to keep a straight face couldn't help but let out a snort, and then quickly shut their mouths. The young Crown Prince consort hopped down from the bed expressionlessly. She casually found a brocade pouch and put Xiao Qiao's Lian's hair inside. She glanced at them from the corner of her eyes and pattered past them. After the little fellow finished washing his hands and rinsing his mouth, he turned to look at Kai Chi and said, "Prepare the carriage. I'm going to Prince Kang's mansion." "Yes." Kai Chi held back her laughter as she turned around and left in a hurry. The little crown princess glanced at the group of junior eunuchs and junior palace maids who had their heads lowered. She walked out with small steps and snorted, "If you want to laugh, then laugh. As soon as Jojo walks out of the room, you can laugh. Why hold it in?" Umph. The second branch of the Mu family had been bustling since early this morning. After the most outstanding young master of the second branch, Mu Erkshu, came back from the academy, the entire second branch was full of jubilation for several days in a row. They had even rewarded the servants several times. The old master's birthday banquet was getting closer and closer. Each branch was also busy raising funds and spending a lot of money to buy birthday gifts for the old master. Not only that, each branch also sent clever manservants to inquire each other about what gifts other people would give to the old master. The second branch was naturally no exception. Early in the morning, someone sent a message to the second branch's old master, saying that the expensive jade Buddha hand ordered by the fifth branch had arrived. The second branch's Madame, Chosha, pushed open the door to her daughter's room and walked in. At a glance, she saw her daughter, who was wearing thin clothes and sitting in front of the dressing mirror. She was combing her hair and staring blankly at the mirror. These days, because her son came back, the house was very lively every day. She didn't pay attention to her daughter's difference. Chapter 3289. Today, she heard from Mama that 7th Miss hadn't left her room for 2 days. She couldn't help but suspect that her daughter was unwell because of the sudden change in weather. "Ro Xian, what are you doing? Why are you wearing so little and sitting in front of the mirror in a daze?" Madame Chiu frowned and walked to her daughter's side to tug at her. Mu Ro Xian returned to her senses and hurriedly stood up. "Mother." Madame Chiu poked her forehead. "I thought you were possessed, sitting in front of the dressing table in a daze. What's going on? Tell Mother." "It's nothing." Mu Ro Xian pursed her lips and casually used a wooden comb to comb through her hair. Madame Chiu saw her bashful expression and her girlish demeanor. She couldn't help but be startled for a moment before smiling. "What is it? You can tell Mother what's on your mind." "No, nothing's on my mind." Mu Ro Xian put down the wooden comb and her eyes darted around. She couldn't help but pull her mother to sit down. Twisting her body, she stammered, "Mother, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." Madame Chiu couldn't help but laugh. "The entire second branch has been busy preparing for your grandfather's birthday banquet. Mother neglected you and didn't even know that my daughter is a young girl in love and has something on her mind. Mother, don't make fun of me." Mu Ro Xian blushed and shook her mother's hand. She thought for a moment and mustered her courage to ask, "Mother, I want to ask that. I heard that His Highness the Crown Prince is only in his early 20s, but his cultivation is very impressive. Is that true?" Madame Chiu nodded and then looked at her daughter with a vigilant expression. She sized her up, and her heart sank for no reason. She recalled that her daughter had become reluctant to go out in the past 2 days. To be more precise, it was after returning from New South Garden. It couldn't be. The object of her daughter's love was His Highness the Crown Prince, right? Madame Chiu's heart instantly felt uneasy, and her gaze was very vigilant as she looked sharply at Mu Ro Xian. "Ro Xian, tell Mother the truth. Why did you suddenly mention the Crown Prince? Could it be that you fell in love with him after seeing him once at New South Garden?" "Mother, what nonsense are you saying?" Mu Ro Xian was so embarrassed that her face turned crimson. She hurriedly covered her face and cried out, "No, no, Mother, don't speak nonsense." Madame Chiu looked at her carefully and felt even more uneasy. His daughter had grown up. It was time to consider finding a match for her. In the past, Madame Chiu had always thought that her daughter was still young. Besides, people in Shenzhou generally lived long lives, so it was not the time to talk about marriage. But now, it seemed that it was better to settle his daughter's marriage as soon as possible, so that she wouldn't keep thinking about nonsense. Chosha said seriously, Ro Hsien, that day in New South Garden, you saw with your own eyes how His Highness the Crown Prince treated the Crown Princess. Even Miss Chen from the left Prime Minister's family was not able to enter the Crown Prince's eyes. Do you think you can do it? Don't ever do something you're not confident in. Otherwise, you'll waste time and hurt yourself. Chosha said coldly, don't think that just because the Crown Prince listens to the Crown Princess wholeheartedly and is extremely good to her, that if you were in her place, perhaps you could also receive the Crown Prince's favor. You're not the Crown Princess. You'll never be her. It's extremely important to recognize your own status. Mu Ro Hsien's heart skipped a beat. She widened her eyes at her mother and couldn't help but tear up. Chapter 3290. Madame Chou's words to her could be said to be harsh. She had never seen her mother with such a stern face. How could she say this to her? Mother is saying this for your own good. Madame Chou sighed. The young lady's first awakening of love was not sensible and her thoughts were too simple. She only saw the Crown Prince's gentleness and hated that she couldn't replace the Crown Princess. However, she didn't know that the Crown Prince's gentleness was all because of the little Crown Princess. If it were her, that man might not even cast a cold glance at her from the corner of his eyes. Don't indulge in wild fantasies. Beautiful dreams definitely won't come true. You saw His Highness the Crown Prince treating the Crown Princess gently and doting on her like a pearl or a treasure. That's because the Crown Princess is beautiful enough to make one's heart ache. If it were you, His Highness the Crown Prince wouldn't even look at you. Madame Chou coldly threw down these words and stood up to walk out. Tidy up yourself and don't think about anything else in the future. Your grandfather's birthday banquet is only a few days away. Come out and help. Seeing Madame Chou walk out without looking back, Mu Ruian was so angry that she slapped a head ornament on the dressing table and it fell to the ground. Her personal maidservant, who had quickly walked in, was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly stepped forward and looked at the broken head ornament on the ground in shock. Young miss, why did you break the head ornament? This is your favorite one. At this moment, Mu Roxian's heart was bleeding. How could she have known that she would break her beloved jewelry in a fit of anger? While her heart was bleeding, she also felt grief and indignation. Being scolded by her mother like this, she felt ashamed and unconvinced at the same time. Why did her mother deny all the feelings she contributed when she first awakened of love? It was really laughable. Just because she and her father were married into a family, she didn't allow her daughter to awaken to love? Was there any mother who would say that about her own daughter? Why did she say that she was inferior to the Crown Princess? Empty words without any comparison. Since they had never crossed swords, how could she know that she was inferior? Mu Roxian's slender fingers twisted together as she stood up and walked out quickly. Her personal maidservant hurriedly called out to her, "Little mistress, please slow down. You haven't changed your clothes yet." On the other side, Aba's carriage had already arrived at the gate of Prince Kang's mansion. She had not sent a greeting card to Wang Fei. Thinking that she had been back for 2 days and had not come to visit Imperial Aunt, she could not help but come in a hurry. Imperial Aunt had taken the warm jade pill for a long time. Today, she came over to check her pulse and see if she could use acupuncture. Who would have thought that when she arrived at the door, she would coincidentally see Princess Consort Kong coming out, surrounded by people in front and behind, looking like she was about to go out. The little fellow had just come down from the carriage and met Princess Consort Kong, who had just come out of the door. Both of them were stunned. Princess Consort Kang's eyes instantly lit up, and she quickly walked forward with a big smile. She laughed and said, I was wondering why there was a magpie chirping outside my door so early in the morning. So it's because our family's Jojo is coming. Ha ha ha, I was just about to go to the Eastern Palace to look for you. I didn't expect you to come over. Princess Consort Kong was extremely happy. She went forward and hooked her arm around Aber's small arm, smiling intimately as she said, "Quick, let Imperial Aunt take a look. She's gotten thinner after going to the academy." Abba could not help but be speechless. "No, how has she gotten thinner? I heard that your Imperial Academy's principal is quite stingy. His usual meals are also not that great." Chapter 3291. Sir Jojo's eyes lit up. "Who did you hear that from? It's true. Dean Yoon was a miser and greedy person. Even a school uniform could be sold at a sky-high price. Who else could I have heard it from? I just heard some gossip from your Imperial uncle." "Imperial uncle is so insightful." Arbor nodded her little head in all seriousness. Lu Lonyun couldn't help but burst into laughter when she saw this. "Let's go in and chat with Imperial Aunt. I haven't seen you in a long time. You have to stay here tonight and listen to Imperial Aunt." The young Crown Princess blinked. She had just raised a small hand when Princess Consort Kong pulled it down. "I'll find someone to inform the Crown Prince later. I'm borrowing his wife for a night. He can't be so stingy as to refuse, right?" As she said this, she couldn't help but burst into laughter first. The young Crown Princess tilted her head in thought, then nodded and said, "All right. Then I'll have to trouble Imperial Aunt." "Oh, what trouble is there? Imperial Aunt can't ask for more," Princess Consort Kong said with a wide grin. "Imperial Aunt, I'll take your pulse in a bit. Yesterday, the old prince told Lien that all the materials on the list of medicinal ingredients have been found. Let's take a look in a bit. If your body's condition permits, we can begin the acupuncture treatment." Okay. Lu Lonyun nodded repeatedly and said with a chuckle, "There's no rush. Let's have a good chat first." Older sister. The two of them were intimately holding hands as they walked into the estate when they heard a soft and weak call from behind them. Arbor clearly felt Princess Consort Kang's arm around her stiffen slightly, and her body involuntarily tensed up. She couldn't help but frown. She turned around with Princess Consort Kong to look at a delicate woman who was walking down from a carriage. She was dressed in white silk with a small white flower in her hair. This woman was like a willow branch swaying in the wind. Her palm-sized face was filled with tears. Before she spoke, tears had already streamed down her face. Arbor only felt Princess Consort Kang's body tense up even more. She pursed her lips and didn't say a word. Elder sister. That weak and helpless woman looked pitifully at Princess Consort Kong. She said softly, "Sorry to disturb you. It's just that elder sister knows about my current situation. After my late husband passed away, I was chased out by his whole family. I really had nowhere to go, so I could only come and look for my sister." Lu Lonyun's face looked terrible. Arbor couldn't help but look at the delicate woman curiously. This woman looked delicate and weak, as if she would be blown away by a gust of wind. Tears flowed down her cheeks before she spoke. Standing at the entrance of Prince Kang's Fu, she looked so pitiful that the passers-by could not help but cast their gazes on her. Those who didn't know better would think that Princess Kong had bullied this woman and made her cry non-stop at the entrance of Prince Kang's mansion. The head maidservant of the Wang Fei, Dan Ling, stepped forward with a cold smile and stood in front of the weak woman. She said in a neutral tone, "Third young lady, third young master suddenly passed away. Our Wang Fei has already sent people to express her condolences. She also sent consolation money and arranged for people to send third young lady back to Lu family." "Why did third young lady come to Prince Kang's Fu instead of returning to Lu family? Your maternal family is Lu family, not our Prince Kang's Fu." Dan Ling couldn't help but roll her eyes. The old madam of Lu family was truly a weirdo. Or rather, she was someone whose mind was already biased to the heavens. She clearly knew that this younger daughter's actions were wrong, but she still tacitly allowed her to come to Prince Kang's Fu to look for her Wang Fei. She glorified it by saying that her late husband had passed away and that she had no relatives to rely on to seek shelter from her older sister. Chapter 3292. F***ck, don't you have a maternal family? Your biological mother, old Madame Lu, isn't dead yet. Do you need to seek refuge with older sister? Her intentions are truly obvious. Danling couldn't help but roll her eyes. She then gave a look to the two young maidservants behind her before walking up to tug at the delicate woman. Third young miss, the wind is strong here. Don't get a headache from the wind again. This servant will have someone send you back. Older sister. The delicate woman looked at Princess Consort Kong with tears in her eyes, looking helpless and melancholic. It was as if Princess Consort Kong would commit an unpardonable crime if she didn't take her in. Princess Consort Kong was utterly disgusted. She immediately turned her head away and said coldly, "Send third young miss back." Woo-woo. Older sister. The delicate woman wiped her tears with a handkerchief and cried out mournfully, "Older sister, I know you hate me, but Longxin has no other choice. That's why I came to find you. If it weren't for the fact that my husband's family couldn't tolerate a weak woman like me, why would I come to beg for older sister's mercy?" Princess Consort Kong turned to glare at her. "I had someone send you to the Lu estate, but you came to my place to cry and make a fuss? Others might think that the Lu estate couldn't tolerate you either. Aunt, what are you talking about?" A girl in her early 20s popped out from the delicate woman's side. She stomped her feet and said indignantly, "It was maternal grandmother who sent us here to find Aunt. It's not like we had to come here to look for trouble." Princess Consort Kong was instantly angered into laughter. She looked coldly at the mother and daughter and said, "Since you've lost your husband, it's fine if you go back to your maternal home. But you came to me, your older sister. Do you want to do something like 20 years ago and stir up trouble again?" Princess Consort Kong didn't expect that Lu Longxin still hadn't completely given up on the old prince. She was both amused and angry. She was truly blessed. That's why he ended up with such a top-grade mother and sister. 20 years ago, Lu Longxin had caused a farce. On the day of her wedding, Lu Longxin brought her a bowl of ginseng soup the next night. Fortunately, she had always been on guard against this little sister. She didn't dare to drink it and pretended to faint. In the end, her good sister was so naive that she thought of the play of changing the bride before the bridal sedan chair. She planned to make her faint and replace her, happily going to the prince's mansion to be the mistress of the house. The farce of the Lu family was laughed at for 3 whole years. Every time Princess Consort Kong thought about it, she couldn't help but have a headache. Lu Longxin looked at Princess Consort Kong with a pale face. She trembled all over like a little white flower shivering in the wind. She cried pitifully, "Sister, what are you saying? It's been 20 years, why are you still brooding over it? I really didn't expect Big Sister to be such a person." Lu Longxin wiped her tears and said, "There are some things that I can't say here. Why don't we go into the mansion first?" Princess Consort Kong looked coldly at the little white flower in front of her. "I, Lu Lonyun, am an upright person. There's nothing to hide. If you have anything to say it here. Enter the mansion? In your dreams. Don't even think about entering the mansion in this lifetime." Seeing her resolute attitude, a trace of coldness flashed through Lu Longxin's eyes. Then, she sobbed and said intermittently, "This is also Mother's intention. Big Sister has been childless for so many years. We can't let the old prince die without an heir." She sobbed and said pitifully, "I'm sorry." Chapter 3293. Although I've adopted Lu Iran from my sister-in-law, I'm still raising him. Lu Longxin sniffed and pretended to wipe her tears with a handkerchief. She stole a glance at Lu Lonyun. She continued, "But there's no heir to the prince's mansion. Although I've had a hard life, I'm still a woman with a son and a daughter. If you want to adopt our Zongbao, it's not impossible." Lu Lonyun was so angry that she laughed. It seemed that the mother and children had already planned this out. They wanted to bring their families into the prince's mansion. They wanted to start with the prince's stepsons and stepdaughters, and then the family of 3 would become the new masters of the prince's mansion, right? She did not have a son, But why did she have to adopt Huang Yubao, a good-for-nothing who was almost 20 years old and had a bad reputation? She must have eaten her fill and had nothing else to do. Would it not be better for her to choose a baby from any of the Mo family's royal relatives to raise? She wanted to choose someone with a different surname, and such an unreliable playboy at that. He was already so old. Could he still be of one mind with her in the future? It was so funny. Princess Consort Kong sneered. Before she could speak, the little crown princess frowned and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? People in China generally live long lives. What's wrong with Imperial Aunt living for a few hundred years? Just because she doesn't have children now doesn't mean she won't have children in the future. As long as Imperial Aunt takes care of her body, she can have as many children as she wants in less than 2 years. Why should she adopt your child? Are you kidding me?" Lu Lanxin heard the crisp voice and could not help but be stunned. Then, she cast a displeased glance at Abba. Huang Yubao, who was casually standing beside his mother and sister and playing with the horsewhip in his hand, looked over when he heard the voice. With one look, his eyes widened in shock, and the horsewhip in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. On the other hand, Princess Consort Kong couldn't resist becoming slightly agitated. She pulled over Qiao Mu's small hand while secretly restraining her emotions. She asked softly, "Qiao Qiao, is what you said true?" Aye. Of course it's true. In the past, Wang Fei's body was too cold to conceive. Now that she had taken the warm jade pill, her body should have improved a lot. In the future, I will perform acupuncture for another half a year. Wang Fei's body will only get better and better. When I said 2 years, I was talking about a long time. If nothing goes wrong, she should be able to conceive in a year or so. This time, Lu Lonyun was truly moved. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Good child, I believe in you." Hearing this, Lu Lanxin felt very uncomfortable. She sneered at the princess consort and said, "Sister, don't be so naive. Don't trust a child too much. Look at her age." For her to be able to say such exaggerated words, it must be mostly boasting. Lu Lanxin pursed her lips and pretended to wipe her tears with a handkerchief. "Don't you know what your body looked like since you were young? If that cold disease was so easy to cure, it would have been cured decades ago. As soon as I heard it, I knew that this child was lying. How could you believe that? She's just a child. Is she going to help you nurse your body back to health? Can she nurse you back to health that you've had for decades? Ha ha, that's the biggest joke in the world. Only someone as naive as you would believe it." The princess consort sneered. "I believe in Jojo's medical skills. If she says she can, then she can." Chapter 3294. Lu Lanxin sobbed and said with a pitiful look, "Sister, please don't be so willful anymore. Haven't you been willful enough in the past few decades? Do you really want the Prince Mansion to have no descendants because of you?" The princess's face suddenly changed, and she glared angrily at the blabbermouth woman in front of her. "I'm doing and saying these things for your own good. If you weren't my sister, I wouldn't be bothered to say these intimate words to you. Sister, although the old prince is good to you, you can't take this for granted. Which man in the world doesn't care about children? You haven't had a child for many years. Although the old prince doesn't say it, I don't believe he doesn't have any thoughts about it. If you adopt our Yubao, you'll have a son in the future, won't you? In the future, you'll be able to hold your head up high in front of those royal relatives. They won't be so thick-skinned as to force you to take in those children who are far away from you, right?" The princess sneered. "So, I should be grateful to you as my sister?" Lu Lanxin wiped her tears. "We don't need to be so polite between us. I'm just thinking that you and I are sisters. We're related by blood. If I don't help you, then no one else in this world can." Sir Jojo listened on the side, and he was almost disgusted by the woman in front of him. Why did this woman have to rush the princess to adopt her son who was already so old? He had already told her that the princess would have her own children in the future, but she didn't seem to understand what others were saying. She just kept nagging as if she knew everything. So annoying. Lu Lanxin, you and I know what you're planning. You don't have to pretend to cry here. The princess sneered. Go back to your Lu family. Don't tell me now that I know Lu Feng and I can have our own children. Even if we can't, we won't adopt your Huang Yubao. Give up. Sister? Lu Lanxin twisted the handkerchief in her hand and took 2 steps forward. How can you say that, sister? I'm doing this for you. Do you think I'm doing this for myself? It's you who doesn't have a son, not me. Seeing that we're sisters, I agreed to entrust Yubao to you. What are you waiting for? How could he let this blabbermouth woman cry and kick up a fuss in front of the Prince Yu's mansion? Hit him. Arba suddenly raised his small arm. The servants of the prince's mansion on both sides immediately rushed forward like a swarm of bees, as if they were wooden men who had been triggered by a mechanism. Oh my God, I've long found this little widow an eyesore. Now that I've received the crown princess order, how could I not be overjoyed? Like a swarm of bees, the servants all rushed forward. In a flurry, they raised their sticks and shovels and smashed them on the heads of the mother and children. Bang, 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 bang. Chaos ensued, mixed with the little white flowers crying and shrieking. Elder sister, elder sister, what are you doing, elder sister? Hey, don't hit me. Sigh. Elder sister. Arba looked at the scene in front of her expressionlessly. She pulled Princess Kong and turned to walk into the door. Elder sister, tell them to stop. Elder sister, Chapter 3295. The gate of the prince's mansion was immediately closed. Lu Lanxin and her children were beaten up by the servants of the prince's mansion. They ran into the carriage as if they were escaping and ordered someone to drive the carriage away from the prince's mansion as soon as possible. Not long after the carriage left, a wicked servant of Prince Kang's mansion picked up a ball of horse dung and pasted it on the window. Lu Lanxin and her daughter, Huang Yoxia, screamed and cried in each other's arms. Mother, Aunt has changed. How did she become so snobbish and treat us like this? Huang Yoxia screamed. Lu Lanxin also cried and said with tears in her eyes, Let's go back and ask your grandmother for justice. I was thinking, how can there be such justice in the world? She doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. We went to help her, but she beat us up and drove us out. The older she gets, the more disrespectful she becomes. Huang Yoxia smoothed her messy hair and paused when she heard the word, old. Mother, don't you think that Aunt seems to have become prettier? Did you notice that she seems to have become 20 years younger? Hey, do you think it's possible that she'll really be able to give birth to a son like that wretched lass said? Bah! She's already so old and she still wants to give birth to a son. Huh? Lu Lanxin twisted her thin lips harshly. She's destined to die without a son. She shamelessly stole my prince. Now, she can't give birth to a son for decades and still wants to keep that man. If she's the second meanest person in the world, no one is the first. Even though Lu Lanxin said that, she still felt a little jealous. She naturally saw Lu Lanyun's change. Not only did she become slimmer, but she also became prettier and younger. Her delicate skin was comparable to a young girl's. How was this possible? She had to go out and find out what was going on. For the past 2 years, she had been detained at home by that wretched person and had to take care of that wretched tuberculosis ghost. Her news was lagging behind. Now that she finally hoped that guy would rise to the heavens, she had to fight for a good future for herself. Arba pulled the princess consort in and closed the door. He helped the princess consort to sit on the stool. Princess consort, you can't be so nice. To deal with those bitches, you have to be more ruthless than them. The head maidservant Dan Ling's mouth was slightly agape as she hurriedly nodded her head. Your Highness, the crown princess is absolutely right. Since conciliation doesn't work, I'll just beat him up a few more times. I'll beat them up every time they come. After the 3rd time, let's see if they still dare to come and cause trouble. But I've always thought that we still have to take into account the reputation of the prince's mansion. How much is face worth? Xiao Mu rolled her eyes and directly sat down next to her. How unpleasant is it to keep feeling stifled in your heart? A person's life can be as short as 100 years or as long as 1,000 years. How much time do you have to squander with those bitches? Just remember my words. If someone makes you uncomfortable, you have to make her uncomfortable 100 times more. That's all. At the side, Dan Ling's little head was about to fall off. Her eyes were bright as she looked at the young crown prince consort. She felt that the crown prince consort's words were too reasonable. She hurriedly went forward to pour 2 cups of water, handing one to Wang Fei and the other to the crown prince consort. She hurriedly slandered, "Wang Fei, this servant feels that the crown prince consort's words are too reasonable. Think about it. For so many years, that old lady has been doing unreliable things. How can our prince's mansion maintain its reputation?" Chapter 3296. Look at the crown princess. After a violent beating, she immediately chased that family of 3 away. That's the right thing to do. You should have done this long ago. If you keep indulging them, they'll take advantage of you instead. Dan Ling said repeatedly. The princess consort couldn't help but glance at her in amusement. She looked down at the teacup in her hand and stuffed it into Dan Ling's hand. "I think you're the one who needs to drink some water to moisten your throat." Saying so much in one go, how long had she held it in? She wouldn't be happy if she didn't spit it out, would she? Dan Ling pursed her lips and took a step back with the teacup in her hand. Abba continued, "Dan Ling is right. Princess consort, from the looks of it, that mother and children might come to make a fuss tomorrow. Let me tell you, we have to think of a way to settle this once and for all. Otherwise, you'll be annoyed in the future." Right. Dan Ling nodded furiously like a chick pecking at rice. She hurriedly interrupted, Crown Princess, help our princess consort. Give her some ideas and think of a way to keep that family of 3 out forever. This servant is really disgusted every time I see them. If it gets serious, this servant can't even eat." Princess consort Kong looked at her speechlessly. "All right, don't bring up these troublesome matters. Jojo, let's not talk about this." The princess consort smiled and took her little hand. "Let's go, I'll take you to the back garden for a stroll." Arbor nodded his little head. The princess consort suddenly thought of something and turned to look at her. "Jojo, I have a presumptuous request. I want to buy another beautifying pill. Imperial Aunt, 1 beautifying pill is enough. It's useless to eat more." Arbor glanced at her and said, "Hey, it's not me who wants to buy it. It's that good-for-nothing sister-in-law of mine." Princess consort. Dan Ling immediately dodged. "I said not to meddle in their family's affairs, but you still meddle." The princess consort gave her a sidelong glance. She knew Lu Hashe's character better than anyone else. He was definitely not evil or treacherous. He was just a little stingy, greedy for small gains, and not magnanimous. For the sake of her elder brother, she wanted to help her if she could. "You should have seen her that day. It's..." The princess consort smiled awkwardly. "The one who stopped your car at the entrance of Zhanhua workshop." Oh. Now that Princess Kong mentioned it, Arbor remembered. She was the plump woman who kept saying that she was Princess Kang's sister-in-law. "My sister-in-law mainly wants to put on some weight." Princess Kong coughed softly and said, "I think she has been putting on too much weight recently. When I saw her 2 years ago, she wasn't that fat. Recently, she's like a cabbage that's been injected with catalysts. The longer she grows, the stranger she becomes." Dan Ling, who was following behind the 2 of them, twitched her mouth when she heard that. Sometimes, the princess consort's words were quite sarcastic. "Oh." Arbor nodded and turned to look at Wang Fei. "That Lu Hashe? Ah, that's her. She's so fat. You must remember her. Her sister-in-law's fatness was completely different from her middle-aged fatness back then. She's not fat. Arbor shook her head and said with a serious expression, she's poisoned. Ah! Princess Kong paused in her steps and turned to look at Arbor. She's not fat. You said she's poisoned? Yes. Sir Jojo nodded with a serious expression. I noticed it that day when she jumped into my car. Chapter 3297. Her obesity can't be cured by the beautifying pill alone. She has to be detoxified first. Princess Consort Kong looked astonished. She's just a woman of the inner residence and doesn't have much cultivation. Who wanted to make things difficult for her and poisoned her? Chow Mu shrugged her shoulders. This was not something she could manage. I can give you the detoxification pill. Arbor took out a detoxification pill and handed it to the princess consort. Then he said, that day, she said she had money and was willing to pay several times the price for my beautifying pill. The princess consort, don't worry, Jojo. I'll just let that stingy sister-in-law of mine bleed. She would only cherish it if she bought it at a high price, right? When night fell, Emolien and the old prince returned to the prince's residence together. As soon as he entered the main hall, he saw his little wife sitting upright and still. She was holding a porcelain cup in her hand and her round eyes were looking in his direction. When she saw him, she pretended not to see him and turned her little head away with a whoosh. Prince Mo was immediately amused. He quickly ran over and reached out to hug his wife. Good evening, Jojo. Your husband hasn't seen you for a day and misses you very much. Humph. The little fellow threw the back of his head at him. Emolien smiled and turned her little body around. Jojo, what did your husband do to make you unhappy? You didn't wake me up when you left. Emolien curled his lips and bent down to rub against her delicate neck. Heaven and earth can bear witness, the sun and moon can bear witness. At that time, I called Chow Chow 7 to 8 times, but Chow Chow ignored this hubby. Lady Chow Chow looked at him expressionlessly. She moved her small body and raised her hand to push his face. She said hesitantly, my wood spirit energy has an exuberant vitality. It can help you grow your hair. Emolien laughed out loud. His little wife. How could she think of anything? Then if I use my wood spiritual energy to grow hair, will your husband's hair continue to grow out of the main hall? That's possible. Arbor thought for a moment, then put down his little hand and patted Prince Mo's head. Forget it then. At the side, the old Wang Yi sneakily glanced at the lovey-dovey couple. He lowered his voice and said to the Wang Fei, why did you trick the little girl here again? Hey, you didn't see how anxious that little brat was. She didn't even return to the Mu family and directly boarded this prince's carriage, insisting on coming back with me. I didn't invite him. The old prince pursed his lips. Wang Fei giggled and pulled on the old Wang Ye's hand as they walked towards the two. Crown Prince, Wang Yi, go change first. You'll be able to eat dinner in a bit. Go change your clothes. The little fellow reached out and patted his chest with a look of disdain. Prince Mo couldn't help but laugh. He lowered his head and kissed her hard when she wasn't paying attention. Then, he winked and said, Jojo, something interesting happened in court today. I'll tell you about it later. After saying that, he went to his room to change his clothes. Half an hour later, the four of them sat down at a small round table in the dining room to eat. The old Wang Yi roared loudly, I heard from the steward that Lu Lonxin came to make a fuss today? How did you deal with her? She didn't make things difficult for you, did she? Princess Consort Kong looked at him speechlessly. How could she make things difficult for me? She's just a newly bereaved widow. She can't make things difficult for me. Humph. The old Wang Yi snorted in annoyance. Her husband just died, and she's just a widow. Isn't she ashamed to run out of the house every few days? Chapter 3298. On the side, Dan Ling was serving food to them and hastily said, "Thankfully, Crown Prince Consort gave the order for the retainers to chase that mother and children away. Otherwise, who knows how long they would have made a ruckus." "Chased away?" The elderly prince was startled, and then he laughed out loud. Good, they should have been beaten up long ago." Princess Consort Kong brusquely glanced at the prince before saying with a smile, "What's the point of saying those senseless things in front of the child? All right, let's eat." "I didn't cook fish soup today," the elderly prince quietly grumbled. "I cooked it." Princess Consort Kong glanced at him in amusement and annoyance. "I wonder why the kitchen hasn't brought it over yet." "Then go take a look." The elderly prince repeatedly urged, "Go take a look at the kitchen and see if those servants are slacking off." "All right, I'll go take a look right now." Princess Consort Kong was helpless against him, so she could only stand up and leave the small sitting room. Arba glanced at the princess consort's departing figure before turning to look at the elderly prince. "What do you want to say by purposely sending the princess consort away?" The elderly prince hastily shifted his stool over a bit and simply sat next to Arba. He quietly said, "Little Stoic, let me tell you something. Tomorrow, that Liu family will definitely come to make a ruckus. I'm telling you, since you have nothing better to do, just stay in this prince estate. At that time, you can help Royal Uncle beat them up." "Royal Uncle, have you wanted to beat them for a long time?" The elderly prince nodded repeatedly. "Your royal aunt's mother is an old muddlehead. She's especially unreliable when doing things. Help me look after your royal aunt, and I'll gift Huangji Rice Shop to you later. How about it?" The little Stoic nodded her small head, and the two immediately exchanged a tacit glance. Emolien, who was squeezed to the side, couldn't help but laugh. "Royal Uncle, Auntie will be back soon. You should quickly return to your seat." This brat was truly a hindrance. The elderly prince disdainfully glanced at Prince Amo before winking at the little Stoic. "Jojo, that cough, The old prince looked like he was constipated. He held it in for a long time without saying a complete sentence. He anxiously looked outside, as though he was waiting to see if Wang Fei would coincidentally enter the door. "Ahem, about that. Your Highness, please say it quickly." Arba rolled his eyes. He felt tired listening to his father's stammering. "Isn't that your auntie, recently, that took the beautifying pill you gave her, right?" "Then, I look different every day." "Ah, I'm becoming more and more young and beautiful." "You don't like it." Arba had already guessed what he wanted to say, but he just kept teasing him with an expressionless face. "Ah, no, that's not what I meant." The old prince glanced outside again and said in a low voice, "What I mean is, that beautifying cream of yours, is it useful for us men?" Pfft. Emolien almost spat out a mouthful of soup. "Oh my, uncle, can you please give me a warning before you tell me a joke?" The little Stoic's small face was taut as she asked in deadly earnest, "Your Highness, do you want beautifying?" The elderly prince glanced at his personal page boy, who had his head lowered and shoulders trembling. He waved his hand and shooed him away. Go laugh outside." "I'm not joking with you. Don't you also know? In the past I ate that aging pill. My appearance, has aged quite a bit. Isn't that? Your royal aunt is becoming more and more youthful." Chapter 3299. When the pitiful prince discovered that his wife was becoming more and more delicate and beautiful, he felt like he was her father when he stood next to his wife. He truly felt extremely stifled. He had to think of a way to change this situation. Hence, this guy immediately thought of Emolien's wife. "That beautifying ointment is useless on men? If His Highness wants beautifying, I have an ointment here that is also useful for men." Hey, then, give it. The elderly prince poked the little Stoic's arm. "Hurry up, don't keep it to yourself. Give Uncle Emperor a jar. If it's useful later, I'll sell it to you. It's not impossible to cheat Giant Pain. Arbor, you really are the Prince of Giant Pain's biological older brother. Here, take it and use it. I guarantee that you'll be 10 years younger within 3 months. In the future, don't foolishly take that aging pill again. Arbor glanced outside the window, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. Hey, lower your voice, lower your voice. The elderly prince hastily put away the men's beautifying ointment and sneakily glanced outside the door. After a while, the princess consort walked in, but her eyes were a bit red. She sat next to the elderly prince and cast him a sidelong glance before saying with a smile, Come, bring in the fish soup. Jojo, Auntie will scoop a bowl for you. Auntie, we can start the acupuncture tomorrow. I checked on Auntie today. Her body is recovering well. Good. The elderly prince said happily, Then you stay at home tomorrow to accompany your auntie. I'll go to the palace to answer a call. If there's nothing else, I'll come back earlier. Do you know how to play horse divinity games? Tomorrow, the 4 of us will play horse divinity games. I'm telling you, I've never lost in horse divinity games. It was night, and the moonlight was like water. After Arbor finished bathing, he sat next to the window and gazed at the night sky. He listened to the gentle wind rustling the leaves outside. His Highness is really happy today. Emolienne walked out with a smile while drying her wet hair. That's right, I found out about Long Shoshin. Emolienne put down the towel in her hand and raised her hand to dry her long hair. Then, she sat down beside Arbor and held her little hand. He really hasn't been doing well recently. It's said that his chest and head have been hurting a lot, but they can't find the reason. Everyone in the family said that he was too eager to practice martial arts, which caused his meridians to be blocked. Arbor raised his delicate eyebrows and nodded. Then it seems that the cursed talisman worked. I didn't expect that Mrs. Moo would really avenge your mother-in-law. Emolienne said, I'll get someone to keep an eye on the Long family. If there's any movement, we'll know immediately. Yes. Arbor nodded and leaned his head against his chest. One day, the clouds will part and the sun will shine. Yes. Emolienne reached out to brush away the hair on her forehead and looked around. Do you have that feeling today? Arbor shook her head. Today, I feel lighter all over. That creepy feeling of being stared at has disappeared. This was also why she agreed to let Princess Kong move into the prince's estate. She wanted to test if she would still have that feeling of being stared at if she stayed at Prince Kang's estate. As it turned out, she didn't. Then it seems that there's something strange about the Mu family. Emolienne naturally trusted his little wife's intuition. Intuition was something that couldn't be explained clearly, but he trusted his Jojo unconditionally. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.